The 1972 Summer Olympics in Munich were meant to be a celebration of peace and unity. Germany hoped to present a new image to the world, a nation reborn as a beacon of democracy and progress. Athletes from around the globe gathered in Munich, symbolizing hope for a brighter future. The city buzzed with excitement, anticipation for the sporting spectacles to come. Little did anyone know that this joy would soon be shattered by an act of terror. A Palestinian terrorist group known as Black September had infiltrated the city, forever staining the legacy of the Munich Games.
In the early hours of September 5, 1972, the Olympic dream turned into a nightmare. 8 members of Black September scaled the unguarded fence of the Olympic Village. Their target, the Israeli team's quarters at 31 Connollystrasse. The terrorists' motive was rooted in the complex political landscape of the Middle East. Black September sought to bring attention to the plight of Palestinians under Israeli occupation.
The terrorists' entry exposed a fatal flaw in the security arrangements. They quickly overpowered the Israeli athletes, taking 11 hostages. 2 Israeli athletes were killed during the initial struggle. The world watched in disbelief as news of the hostage situation spread. The hostage crisis gripped the world's attention for the next 21 agonizing hours. Inside the besieged apartment, the terrorists made their demands clear through tense negotiations with German authorities. They insisted on safe passage to Cairo and the release of their imprisoned comrades. The situation was fraught with tension, the fate of the hostages hanging precariously in the balance. The terrorists, armed and desperate, grew increasingly agitated as negotiations dragged on.
German authorities, caught off guard by the attack, struggled to formulate a coherent response. They initially attempted to resolve the situation peacefully, engaging in protracted negotiations with the terrorists. However, the terrorist demands proved to be non-starters, and the negotiations stalled. Adding to the complexity of the situation was the lack of a centralized counter-terrorism unit in Germany at the time. As the hours turned into an agonizing wait, pressure mounted on the German government to find a solution. A rescue attempt was planned, a desperate bid to free the hostages and end the crisis before more lives were lost.
As the day wore on and negotiations faltered, German authorities decided to launch a risky rescue operation at Fürstenfeldbruck Air Base, where the terrorists and their hostages were to be transported under the pretense of being flown to Cairo. However, the operation was poorly planned and executed. The German police lacked adequate training and equipment to handle such a volatile situation. Furthermore, the terrorists were tipped off about the presence of snipers, further escalating the tension and jeopardizing the hostages' safety.
The terrorists, sensing the trap, reacted with predictable violence. A firefight erupted on the tarmac, turning the planned rescue into a bloodbath. 5 of the 8 terrorists were killed in the gun battle, but not before they turned their weapons on their helpless captives. In a final act of barbarity, they detonated a grenade inside one of the helicopters, killing all the remaining hostages. The failed rescue attempt left the world in shock and disbelief. The botched rescue attempt had disastrous consequences, leaving 11 Israeli athletes and 1 German police officer dead.
The world reacted with shock and outrage to the horrific events in Munich. The Olympic Games, once a symbol of international unity and peace, had been violated in the most horrific way imaginable.
The closing ceremony of the Munich Games was transformed into a somber memorial for the slain athletes.
Flags flew at half-mast as the world mourned the loss of innocent lives.
The Munich massacre forced the world to confront the reality of terrorism.
However, others argued that to cancel the Games would be to allow the terrorists to achieve their goal.
Ultimately, the International Olympic Committee decided that the Games must go on, reaffirming the Olympic spirit's resilience.
Section 6. Operation Wrath of God, Retaliation and Controversy. Following the Munich massacre, Israel, consumed by grief and fury, vowed to hunt down and eliminate those responsible for the attack. Prime Minister Golda Meir authorized Operation Wrath of God, a covert operation tasked with tracking down and assassinating the individuals believed to be involved in planning and executing the Munich attack. This operation, shrouded in secrecy and controversy, would span 2 decades and spark ethical debates about extrajudicial killings and the limits of state-sponsored retaliation. Operation Wrath of God was a complex and multifaceted campaign. Israeli Mossad agents operating in secret across Europe and the Middle East targeted individuals suspected of involvement in the Munich massacre. The operation was highly controversial, with some praising Israel's resolve in pursuing the perpetrators and others condemning the extrajudicial killings as acts of vengeance that went beyond the bounds of international law. The Munich massacre and Israel's response highlighted the complex and often intractable nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Section 7. A turning point for Olympic security. The Munich massacre marked a turning point in the history of the Olympic Games. The tragic events of 1972 exposed the vulnerabilities of hosting such a large-scale international event and forced the IOC to completely rethink its approach to security. The relaxed atmosphere of previous games, where security was often minimal and unobtrusive, was deemed untenable in a world where terrorism posed a growing threat.
The 1976 Montreal Olympics, held just 4 years after the Munich tragedy, witnessed a dramatic increase in security measures. Gone were the days of minimal security and a relaxed atmosphere. Instead, the Montreal Games were characterized by a visible security presence, with thousands of armed guards, metal detectors, and surveillance cameras deployed throughout the city.
The Munich massacre led to the creation of permanent security committees within the IOC, tasked with developing and implementing comprehensive security plans for future games. These committees work closely with national governments and security agencies to assess potential threats and develop strategies to mitigate risks. Section 8. The evolving landscape of Olympic security. In the decades since the Munich massacre, the Olympic Games have continued to face evolving security challenges. The rise of international terrorism, coupled with the increasing sophistication of terrorist groups, has forced security officials to adapt their strategies constantly.
To counter these threats, Olympic security has become increasingly sophisticated. Technology now plays a crucial role, with surveillance cameras, facial recognition software, and other high-tech tools deployed to monitor crowds and detect potential threats. Cybersecurity has also become a major concern, as organizers work to protect critical infrastructure and prevent cyber attacks that could disrupt the Games. The threat of terrorism has also forced security officials to think more broadly about potential targets. No longer are stadiums and other sporting venues the only areas of concern.
Section 9. The enduring spirit of the Games. Despite the ever-present threat of terrorism, the Olympic Games endure as a symbol of international cooperation and athletic achievement. The dream of the Games, while tarnished by tragedy, remains a powerful force for good in the world.
The Games have continued, even in the face of adversity. Athletes from around the world still come together to compete on a global stage, their participation a testament to the enduring power of sport to transcend political and cultural barriers. The Olympics, at their core, are about more than just medals and records. They are about pushing the limits of human potential, celebrating diversity, and promoting peace and understanding among nations.
The Games must go on, not in defiance of those who seek to destroy them, but in celebration of the values they represent: excellence, friendship, respect, and the pursuit of a more peaceful world.